suit and tie and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
David Whiting is your real good talkback lawyer, and he joins you now. David, good morning.
Good morning, Virginia.
You want to talk incitement with me, do you? What do you plan to incite?
Well, it's certainly not the commission of an offence, Virginia. That would be somewhere I wouldn't want to go. Mm-hmm. But we have this piece of legislation in the Victorian Crimes Act where it's been there for 30 years. And if you incite a person to pursue a course of conduct which would result in the commission of an offence, then you're guilty of an indictable offence, the indictable offence of incitement.
Now, we're talking about this because of Zoe Bueller, of course, who was the pregnant young woman who was arrested by police after her Facebook posting, and she's since been charged with incitement and released on bail.
Yes. So I actually wanted to know what's the penalty for incitement.
Okay. What is
the penalty for incitement is effectively the penalty of the original offence. So if I was to incite you to park illegally, then my penalty for inciting you to park illegally would be whatever the penalty was for parking illegally.
But hang on, but if I was to incite you to commit murder, would my penalty be for
that's
murder?
The offence. No, then the answer would be yes, you would be, yes, you could suffer the same penalty as I would, assuming you were guilty of incitement, yes.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it's interesting. There's been, there was a report last week, there was an indication that someone was of the professional view that the curfew wasn't lawful.
That's right.
That's
I hear a lot
not
of them
an incitement because it's an argument about what the law is. About whether the law is an appropriate law. But if I was to encourage you to break a law, then I'm liable as you are. But if I tell you, for example, not to pay your parking ticket because you should have your day in court and you'll get a better answer from a magistrate, which I think is unlikely to be true, that's not inciting.
And is it used very often?
Very rare, very rare. Normally you would be an accessory or a co-accused. Very rare. I have lunch every few weeks with a lawyer from Ireland he lives in Melbourne, and his view was that Northern Ireland would be entirely different if they had the offence of incitement in the legislation in Northern Ireland. Because just about everything that goes on in Northern Ireland appears to be as a result of incitement of some kind or another.
Very interesting. We've all been warned now about incitement, so be careful what you say out loud or what you say on social media. David is taking your calls and he's dispensing wisdom. 1300 222 774 is the number if you'd like to get hold of him. Ooh, what? Was that a dog in your room there?
It was a car out the driving past. I live in a street where people like to drive faster than they ought to.
Okay. Well, you should go out and do something about that. You should get yourself a good lawyer, David. See if you can fix this.
Yes, right, okay, good.
Marty's...
or a bright red jacket and a stop sign. Go slow.
A bit of high vis and a stop sign. You can.
Yes,
pass
I can do.
yourself
I've got the high vis vest.
Perfect.
I just need the sign.
There you go. Marty in Torquay, you are first up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
I was working in Melbourne for a builder subcontracting under an ABN. Finished up about 18 months ago, and I'm about $11,000 short of payment. There's a lot of other contractors that's owed, I believe, in the hundreds of thousands all up. The builder ran out of money and the site closed. Where the situation is now is the builder no longer exists on the ASIC website. The company was deregistered about the time that we finished.
Sorry, can you tell me, Marty, was the company deregistered or was the company placed into liquidation and liquidated?
All I can see on the ASIC website is that it says the company is deregistered. It doesn't say under what basis that happened.
Right. If you look down on the ASIC website, it'll give you some indication if it mentions external administration, or it might be that someone's been remarkably clever and simply had the company deregistered. Whereas what you want is for it to go into liquidation and some attempt to to recover the monies that are due. There might also be monies which are still due from the owner of the property. There's all of those issues need to be worked through.
I believe that the builder is owed quite a bit of money by the owner of the company still, and there's some dispute going on there as well. And where it's at now is the building is about to be sold.
Yes.
And I was under the understanding that those sort of transactions couldn't take place until all contractors had been paid.
There's a piece of legislation called the Security of Payments Act, which relates to people in your industry.
Yep.
But in order to get the benefit of that legislation, you actually need to put special notations on your invoices. My recommendation is that you and some other people who are affected go and engage the same lawyer to review the particular situation, and you might be able to get an order to hang on to some of the money from the building. But on your own, unless you are owed hundreds of thousands of dollars, I wouldn't be spending the money. I would be trying to get other people involved who have the same interest as you.
And who would the lawyer serve that against? The building owner or the...
Well, I'm of the thought that you would need at some point to apply to get the building company reinstated and placed into liquidation, and then enforce the claim against the land.
Boy, that sounds complicated, David.
Yeah, there's lots of steps involved, Marty, and it's not a 5-minute deal.
Yeah,
And you don't have all the right answers at the moment, so why not go and talk to the biggest subcontractor affected and see if you can do something together.
Marty, good luck with that. Les is in Toorak. Good morning to you.
Oh, good morning, David. Good morning, Virginia. My mother's in a nursing home with dementia, so I look after her investment property, which covers the costs. Now, I'm happy with the real estate agent's service. They're excellent, except for one thing. When they have a lease signing, they use an electronic system whereby her name and somebody in the office signs that makes or creates the electronic signature, and then a link is sent for me to approve it. Now, I may be being a bit pedantic, because probably doesn't. I don't know what effect that has, but I would have preferred to have my name or my signature actually in the system. Am I being too worried about the situation, or is it a bit unusual?
There's a difference, Les, between an electronic signature and a digital signature.
Right.
And I've been struggling through the same issue at work over what kind of documentation we want people to sign in particular circumstances. So we're talking about a facsimile of your mother's signature, is that right?
No. It's somebody in the office actually writes Mary Smith.
Mary Smith, yes.
Just writes Mary Smith, and then it's sent to me to approve. Now, that signature is not Mary Smith's. It's somebody...
No, there is legislation in Victoria relating to electronic transactions, and if it is intended that endorsement, if you like, is to take effect as the signature of your mother, and you approve it as the attorney, then it's a valid signature within the meaning of the legislation.
Okay.
But you might come along and say what you'd rather have there is Les of Toorak as attorney for Mary Smith.
Yes.
That is in fact what I would prefer.
So you can suggest that, Les?
Yeah.
I will do my best, but I suspect there's payment involved for doing that. That's the idea. Probably
That's life, Les.
Yes, maybe so. Good on you, Les. Thanks so much. John's called in from Maidstone. Hello.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I'm just having a bit of difficulty. I've got a family court order for access to my daughter who lives in New South Wales. Just wondering if I can proceed with getting her to Melbourne for the next school holidays, and if she had to isolate on return, would that adversely affect me with future family law matters?
What are the rules for... The difficulty is going to be that you're supposed to factor in these cross-border rules. Now, your daughter, upon returning, so let's assume that she comes for 2 weeks to Melbourne, she's then required to isolate for 2 weeks when she returns. Is it required to be hotel isolation, or can she isolate at home? Do you know what the rules are on return?
Well, she's 12 years old, so I'm assuming you couldn't put a 12-year-old in a hotel room for 2 weeks by themselves.
No, but then the question then becomes is who's required to pay for the isolation? You would need to, if you want to go
I think the individuals,
if you want to
we're paying
enforce
for
your
our own
rights,
isolation now.
you need to look what the consequences are on the back end, and it might be that the person who your daughter is with at the moment might be justified in refusing you access unless that issue can be resolved.
It just seems that it's been quite a while since I've seen my daughter, and I'm not too sure how many people are in my position. There doesn't seem to be any information on the DHHS website in regard to these cross-border family law matters.
The family court is still dealing with these matters, John, and dealing with these matters on an urgent basis. Have you made contact with the court?
No, I haven't, but I haven't been able to get an answer from my lawyer, and he's on Collins Street and he wears a bow tie, so I thought David might be able to add.
John, the family court is, and I know because we've actually covered this on the program, has stayed open and is available to deal with these urgent matters, and I'm sure, David, you're aware of that too. So,
yeah, I am, but John, I think you need to start somewhere else. I actually need to... There's no difficulty with your daughter coming to Victoria. What you need to do is find out from New South Wales, not from DHHS, which is a Victorian government department, what the rules are and what would apply to her on going back, because that's the issue that you need to deal with.
Well, as I understand it, that has to be hotel quarantine.
Well, if it's hotel quarantine, that's unreasonable for a 12-year-old.
Sure.
Does it mean that the caring parent needs to stay in the hotel room with the child for the 2 weeks? I understand you want to see your daughter, John, but look at it from your daughter's perspective. What works best for her?
Does she have permission to come here, John?
Well, I mean, I guess that I've got signed orders, so that would essentially mean that she does have permission to come here.
Yes, she does. No difficulty coming. The difficulty is whether you're putting an unreasonable pressure on her going back, John.
And I can make up for lost time as per the order as well, can I, David?
No. Probably, I haven't seen the order, but the answer would be that's your fortnight period. There's no automatic right to a substitute period.
Okay. Thank you.
You'd need to either negotiate it or go back to court and get a different period.
All right, John, it is complicated. I might revisit that myself, actually, with the family court, but also in relation to, the cross-border issues, because not everyone is able to get across. But as you say, David, signed orders would have to be acknowledged there. Rosemary's called in from Mentone. Hi, Rosemary.
Oh, good morning. I'm asking about an organised tour that was cancelled by the operator due to border closures for Australia. They offered a 10% credit along with the amount paid, 10% of the amount paid for a future travel up till the end of next year. They said that we could book any time, and we've been trying for months to book it, but none of the discounted fares are available. It was purchased on a non-refundable tariff. So I've found the date that we require, and unfortunately on the date we require they haven't released any discounted fares. So the amount extra that we have to pay, even taking into consideration the 10% credit from the original amount, is going to be $500 per person. They have told me that if we accept that date on the higher fare and they release discounted fares for the same date, we won't be able to revert to the non-refundable tariff that we've paid in full for last year. And that because if we accept it, any future changes that we make to the booking would be considered a cancellation and we lose $30,000.
Yes.
So my query would be, would they not, if they are in control of the inventory, that where somebody has paid in full for a fare, that given that it was cancelled by them and they're not refunding the money, that we should be entitled to travel on a date on which the same configuration of the cabin is available.
Rosemary, you're in what you had was a particular package.
Yes.
That package is now not available to you anymore, and they're coming along and saying we'll add 10% in value and we can offer you these packages.
Yes.
and you either take it or you don't take it. But having taken it, what you've done is you've swapped. So what you now have is a new deal in replacement for the old deal. What you're talking about is I want to keep my finger on the new deal, but if something that works better for me comes along, I want that as well. They're not obliged to give you that.
Okay. All right then, thank you. You've answered my question.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Jane's called in from Ballan. Hi, Jane.
Hi, how are you going?
Good, thanks.
It's just good morning to Virginia and David. Look, my question is about the role of an informant on a death certificate. My brother passed away in January, and my sister, she signed the death certificate, and she actually had another name on there, and we've got that changed back to his original name, and now she was interred in the cemetery, and now she is refusing to sign a form so that we can put a plaque on his grave.
Jane, I'm going to ask you to back up a little.
Yeah.
The informant on a death certificate is the name of the person who provides the information to the undertaker, which the undertaker gives to births, deaths and marriages.
Yes, I understand that.
What's the problem with the information that your sister has provided?
Well, originally she put a different name, an AKA, and we've had that changed, David. The problem that she has, I think, is that she just doesn't want a plaque on his grave, and she's toed and froed a bit from, the wording on the plaque, and as he was
the issue as to what goes on the plaque is an issue for the executor, not for the informant.
Okay. Well, I am the executor, but the solicitors have sort of said we're at a stalemate because, we've decided on the wording, but we need a form signed by her, and apparently, as she is the informant, she is refusing to sign.
There are two issues, Jane. The burial site, the grave, will be controlled by you as the executor.
Right.
It's then a question of the Cemetery Trust and their requirements for the endorsement on the document.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue which involves I would be talking to the Cemetery Trust and having a discussion with them about what's required and why. And if you're not satisfied with the outcome from the Cemetery Trust, there is a process for going to the department. So if you have a concern, there's a state government department that can assist you. So you should be able to circumvent your sister, but it may be that there's a requirement that the name on the plaque matches the name on the death certificate, so that we can match burial records and death records. The other and the last thing is that it's kind of interesting. You're responsible for disposing of the person who died, but the monument is an issue, so even the plaque is an issue for the beneficiaries rather than the executor. But I would have thought that as the executor you have the whip hand and talk to the Cemetery Trust about what their requirements are.
Well, thank you. All the other siblings agreed to the wording on the plaque, and she has agreed to that.
Okay.
But she's just refusing to sign the document. So I think you've clarified that I just need to go to the Cemetery Trust and just use my
work it out with them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good on you. Thanks so much, Jane. Thanks for calling in. Roger's called in from Ivanhoe this morning. What's your question for David? Roger, good morning.
Yeah. Good morning. My local council is finalising a decision to permanently close an important local road in Ivanhoe. They've done the minimum to comply. I can quote the sections of the Local Government Act, but basically, under COVID-19 restrictions, they have just done the minimum and they haven't properly consulted with or informed the community. So if they do go ahead and resolve to permanently close the road, how can I appeal a decision? Would it be VCAT or the local government ombudsman or some other?
I would start with the ombudsman.
Yep.
I don't know that you have any VCAT jurisdiction. I'll look at it from a legal perspective for next week. But if you believe that the council has behaved inappropriately, it's the ombudsman that you talk to. But I would be trying to get as many people as you possibly can to support you with some kind of petition or something similar. So it's not just Roger of Ivanhoe against the council, it's something broader.
Roger, do any of your neighbours share your view, or do they have a different view about closing the road?
They share my view. The difficulty that we've got with the lockdown, it's a matter of trying to work through emails rather than going door to door and getting signatures. But the council itself, and I've forwarded you some of the information. It's a one-way section of Waterdale Road from Upper Heidelberg Road through to the railway underpass.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very, very important link for people travelling from west to east. And council just keep on throwing in erroneous and misleading information.
Okay, well, oddly enough, I actually know that strip of road, and I know someone who lives on it. David, is that the end of your advice there to Roger?
I would just suggest one other thing, Roger. There are a number of sites, I think change.org is one, where you can raise online petitions. So rather than just trying to pass documents around or deal just by emails, you might be able to set up an online petition and get more signatures.
I just want to hear from, thanks and good luck to you there, Roger, from Anna, who's called in from Montrose. Anna, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I'll try not to get emotional. It's not so much upsetting to me as it is for my older son. My former husband has told my older son that he intends to be buried with our daughter who passed away 25 years ago,
Yes.
and is kind of using it as a threat to hold over, as his last. He's actually said to my son that it would be his last up yours bitch, pardon the language. So I'm just wondering what legal right we have there.
Anna, who owns the site?
Well, neither of us own it, far as I know. He says it's in his name.
No, you will have. If someone was to need to bury Anna from Montrose, you would go to a cemetery and you would acquire a right of burial. That right of burial would belong to the person who walked in and arranged and paid. And then your daughter went in it. I'm sorry?
I do believe it's in his name, the grave's in his name.
Then he would be in a position where he could do that.
How can I fight that?
How can you fight that?
Yeah.
In a practical sense, I don't know that you can, Anna. Again, I'll make that a homework issue. But remember that he doesn't get buried till he's dead.
Yep.
So the question then becomes it then becomes the role of his executor to determine where he's buried.
Sure, that's what we're hoping. Yeah.
Anna, that's a very, very tricky situation you're in. Thanks for calling in. Good luck.
That's okay. I'll dig him out if I have to myself.
Thanks, Anna in Montrose. Thank you. 28 minutes past 10. You've got one bit of homework there, David.
I have. I've got two, really, but
all right,
they're both interesting. Thank you.
Look forward to it next week. Thanks so much. David Whiting there, answering your calls and dispensing some legal advice.